So, what happens when the judge doesn't believe your overall theory of the case? This is something that Courtney Clenny, also known as Courtney Taylor, also known as the defendant in the OnlyFans murder case, has to contend with. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome to Legal Bites. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we make sense of the law one bite at a time. So, quick little tidbit, you may be noticing that this video is not coming from my normal studio. This is coming from my California studio, also known as my parents' house. Obviously, like a lot of people, I decided to travel to see some family for Christmas, and so here we are. It's complete even with the homemade art that I made for my mom, which of course promptly made it directly into my room. Thanks, Mom. So anyway, back to the OnlyFans murder case. So the opinion of the judge on this particular issue came about in a recent hearing in the OnlyFans murder case. If you don't know, Courtney Clenny is on trial for murdering her boyfriend, Christian Obumzeli, back on April 3rd, 2022. The state thinks that she murdered him. She claims self-defense. The trial was originally set to begin on December 19th, 2022, but recently, in this last hearing, the court decided to push back the trial to the earliest March 2023. We were looking forward to live streaming it on this channel from gavel to gavel because most likely there should be cameras in the courtroom for this one. But, as disappointing as it is, it looks like we will hopefully have that chance later on in 2023. So, disappointing, sure, but not the end of the world. But anyway, in this same hearing, the court actually made another really important decision, which was denying Courtney Clenny's bond. So as a result, she'll be staying in prison until trial, unless the court decides to change her mind at some point. Now, the reasons why Courtney Clenny would want to not be in prison are plentiful. For one thing, prison is a weird place. Weirder than a lot of people might think even, possibly. I don't know. I just remember that when I first attended a deposition at a prison, I got plenty of an education as to just how strange that place can be. And, understandably, it's not exactly the most comfortable place, and it can be very, very stressful. And based on how she's been appearing in the courtroom and the last several hearings ever since she was arrested, it looks like she's been kind of wearing that stress on her body. Now, I don't want to get into any level of body shaming here, but we do have to confront realities when it comes to someone's presentation in the courtroom. And we often talk on this channel about how realistically, when you're presenting a case to a jury, you're presenting it to a bunch of human beings who are likely to make all kinds of judgments on their own, whether those are popular or not. And in this case, we have somebody who has made millions of dollars through being a model of sorts on Instagram and on OnlyFans. And so there is a certain level of expectation that might come from that presentation of her background, as well as the context of her relationship with the alleged victim, Christian Obumzeli. And it is uncomfortable to point this out, but it's true that it has been noticeable that she has been gaining weight and her appearance has been overall changing since she's been in prison. This honestly probably is because of the overall stress of her situation. She might be the kind of person that has a tendency to stress eat. I know, I've been there. I don't know about you, but I have. But on another level, this could also be her being in some form of withdrawals from drugs and alcohol. After all, when she was arrested in Hawaii, she was arrested from a rehab facility, and it has come out at various hearings that she and Christian Obumzeli used to engage in drugs and alcohol. And based on the audios that we have heard that have come out in this case, she does seem to be somebody who has imbibed quite a bit and over-imbibed on a regular basis. In other words, she may have been dealing with some addiction issues. Now, I'm not going to go into any sort of details in this particular video as to the specifics of those substances that she may or may not have used, but let's just say that they were probably a lot of stimulants, so that may have impacted her overall metabolism when she was actually using them. So in the coming down after the removal of those substances from her life, she may have impacted her metabolism in the opposite direction. Now, when I mention all of that, I'm not saying that to advocate in any way for any of these things. Quite the opposite. Clearly, there are all kinds of reasons why not to use these things. They are incredibly unhealthy and also illegal. I'm simply pointing this out as a potential reason for why she might have a certain fluctuation in her weight. So with all of that in mind, it could very well be that Miss Clenny would like to be able to be out of prison so that she can, I don't know, go to a gym more regularly or a fancier gym or, something along those lines so that she can show up to court when trial actually does come around and be more of her older self, younger self, former self before being arrested. But unfortunately for Miss Clenny, she's going to have to hang around in prison until at least her trial date, or maybe the rest of her life if she's convicted, of course. And again, this is obviously assuming that the judge doesn't change her mind at some point between now and the trial date. But anyway, why did the judge decide not to let Miss Clenny out on bail in the first place? Well, there are two basic reasons. The first is that if she was sent out on bail, she would be sent to live in Texas with her parents. And the judge said that she just was not comfortable with sending her all the way to another state. This would increase the risk of her being a flight risk. And this was something that prosecutors really hammered in when they were arguing against Courtney Clenny being let out on bail. They said that between the distance between Florida and Texas and the overall amount that Courtney Clenny has been able to make through her work online, we're talking literally millions of dollars in the span of 2 years. All of that sort of comes together to make her a potential flight risk because of the distance and the resources and all of that put together. But the second reason why the judge did not let her out on bail was a little bit more interesting. This is where she said that she really didn't believe that Courtney Clenny was actually acting in self-defense. The reason why this conclusion is important for the bond question is because it answers the question as to whether or not Courtney Clenny is a danger to other people, potentially if she's let out of prison. In other words, was this just an isolated incident, or is this something that she might repeat her behavior elsewhere with other individuals? If the judge thought that this was a mere situation of self-defense, it would have been limited to this one kind of interaction with this one individual who obviously is no longer around. But if it doesn't seem like this is self-defense, it means that this is a behavior that Courtney Clenny might repeat elsewhere with other individuals around her. And admittedly, Courtney Clenny's self-defense argument is not really that strong. She claims that she was essentially being beat up by Christian Obumzeli and that in self-defense, she decided to throw a kitchen knife at him from over 10 feet away. But the problem for Clenny here is that this was contradicted actually by the medical examiner's report. The medical examiner said that the actual injury that Obumzeli sustained suggests that there was more force that was necessary for that wound to happen. In other words, that he was stabbed from very up close with that knife. And so for a lot of people, including myself, this is a contradiction that really matters quite a bit and is one of the biggest reasons why people will say that they think that she actually murdered him as opposed to acting in self-defense. And I will say personally that aside from that, the more evidence that comes out that we're able to see in this particular case, the more I feel like I am siding with the prosecution on this particular case, and I feel like justice will be served with a conviction. Okay, so practically speaking, what exactly does it mean when the judge says that she does not believe the overall theory of the defense's case? Well, for one thing, if you are pro-prosecution in this particular case, don't get too excited. Remember that this is a jury trial case, so it's not up to the judge as to whether or not Clenny is ultimately convicted. That decision is going to come from the jury of 12 peers. Some other things that could happen, though, with this revelation is that it could potentially color the way in which the judge decides what evidence comes in, what evidence comes out. But remember, she still has to have some decent reasons for these discretionary decisions. She really shouldn't let the jury know that she has come to this particular conclusion herself, and all of her decisions on these evidentiary issues really should be still done in a fair manner and an objective manner. And so far, there's really nothing that I have seen in this case that indicates to me that the judge would be anything but that. But it is an interesting indication as to how a hopefully objective third-party observer is viewing the facts of this case as it's being presented to her and coming to a particular conclusion. Of course, the evidence that she's seen so far isn't necessarily going to be a one-for-one for the evidence that the jury will see in this particular case. So the jury could come to a different conclusion than her. The jury could decide that she was using self-defense in that incident on April 3rd, 2022. But I have a feeling that the jury is likely to side more with the prosecution than with the defense on this one. It'll be really interesting to see what evidence does come out when trial actually does happen. Right now, it's supposed to be March 2023. And if there are cameras in the courtroom, we will be here watching every minute of it. But those are my thoughts. What do you think? Let us know in the comments down below. Anyway, I hope you found this interesting or at least informative. And if you did, I would love it if you could hit the like button. It does help us with the YouTube algorithm gods. And if you're new here and you want to see more content like this, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can find out when the next video is uploaded. See you in the next video.